I was just calculating how much the shadow seems to affect our week 2 results. It seems as expected there are so many strange happenings compared to my initial files. A trace residue that means they are rewriting themselves on a weekly basis. I need at least one more week to decipher what we have learned. Of course, we have reached an interesting point of the season. One more week of matches before we begin to venture out of our home territories. And it brings up another interesting point of emphasis I am noticing. It seems the year prior to 2021 there was a great distress in the world. And it meant no one was there to cheer on their sides as they battled on some sort of a grid made of iron. But that has changed in these new files we are all experiencing, and since I suspect they are changing before my eyes, the results are completely unknown. One factor I've picked up on, perhaps a side effect of the shadow's apparent effect on the past and the time vortex, is the way that fans seem to be making it tougher on teams, even favorites, and that in turn makes fantasy football projections very difficult to calculate. Look at how the Washington football team edged New York by a point with a last-second field goal. How the Ravens beat the Chiefs on a touchdown turnover in a 4th-and-1 play. How the Cardinals beat the Vikings by a point after a missed last-second field goal. And how the defenses of Chicago and Carolina actually did very well. But the effect seems to be limited. Look at the Steelers, Seahawks, Colts, Eagles, Jets, and Dolphins. All beaten at home. Perhaps some teams are immune to the screaming chaos. Like me when I was younger and started out as a colony cook. Alas, my love of science had me try ingredients that probably shouldn't be consumed by humans. I was run out of the place by angry mobs, but made it home and basked in the safeness of booby traps. Home advantage also seemed to be quite apparent in our game of the week, with Misty Forest further strengthening my belief that it could be very important in our quest. Only time will tell. For now, it is time for round 3, and remember, keep your wits, or the shadows will consume you.
Spread from the pyramids to the oceans to the coasts. But behold the test, a smoking gun, a quest passed down for generations. A prophesized hero, the champion. In order to save everyone, thou must drink from the cup. 12 of us on this mission. What's next? 17 weeks to be the best. Injuries and buys, thou should have guessed. The waiver wire request was denied, but maybe a trade will provide an edge and a chance to be a legend. Fight for humanity, reach the goal. It's a quest for the Green Ball. Green Ball. Welcome to the quest for the Green Bowl, the Shadows of Chaos. I'm your host, Anthony Oates, so once again bringing you this fantasy football show with a twist. Of course, the mysterious stranger will give us the lowdown on our next home base in the game of the week later during our Week 3 previews. I'll also give you my thoughts on this dreaded taunting rule that the NFL is going all in on this season. But let's start with the wild results of Week 2 in this league, starting in the Central Territory. The Great Superior Superballs travel to Ghost Mountain to take out Meow Master, and despite set the Owls' 53.1% chance to win. It was Meow Master riding on the back of Derrick Henry's 237 total yards and 3 TDs. That's 42.7 points on our league with the bonus point. Meow Master won 108.4 to 85.22 in a fairly disappointing game for the Owls. Mahomes and Chubb did well, but Tyreek Hill was taken out of the game by the Ravens defense, and the Browns defense surprisingly had trouble against Houston. Henry, who has had many amazing games that has translated to very high scores in fantasy football, was obviously the reason for Meow Master's win. Both teams are now 1-1. In our league, Henry was the 5th round pick in the draft, and just like the last few years, it makes you wonder why he isn't being selected a little higher. Next, Low-Key Lebowski Thor hosted Natty Ice Ice Baby at the Philosopher's Swamp and came in with a 57.4% chance to win. And while Ron Rodgers made it close on Monday with 4 TDs and Devontae Adams did okay, it wasn't enough, as Lebowski Thor continues to make his mark as the top team in our power rankings with another score of 125 points or more, winning 125.2 to 106.5, moving to 2-0 overall. Kyler Murray is a big reason for Lebowski Thor's success with another 40-plus point performance, and the Bucs defense made his 8th round pick in the draft look a little better, as the defense proved to be the difference, with the Bucs outscoring Washington 19-1 thanks to 2 defensive scores. Natty Ice had a good week though, so at 0-2 overall, Natty Ice has something to build on going into week 3 after scoring over 100 points. Out in the Eastern Territory, Green Acres welcomed Risky Business to the Blue Dunes, with Risky Business entering with a 55% chance to win. Of course, Risky Business did very well in a 128.74 to 85.62 win. The Patriots defense once again proved huge when facing a rookie quarterback, and it was even better for Risky Business, with the Patriots defense outscoring Pittsburgh's defense 20-2. Also, Brady continues to look ageless with 5 TDs. Lockett also caught a huge deep touchdown pass. Man's looking like a beast. Risky Business is one of the 2 undefeated teams left in the league at 2-0. Green Acres falls to 1-1. Next, Remember the Titans travel to the Gateway Islands to take on the Multiple Scoregasms with a 52.5% chance to win, but it was the underdog Multiple Scoregasms getting the huge Monday night performance by Aaron Jones, 4 TDs for Jones to lead to the 86.48 to 80.78 win. Remember the Titans had a nice Sunday night performance with his first round pick, 6th overall, Travis Kelce, who had a lone highlight reel touchdown against the Ravens, but when you leave a guy like Cooper Kupp on your bench that finishes with 150 yards and 2 scores, it usually leads to heartbreak. That was one of the big differences here, of course. Last year's runner-up is now 0-2, while the Scoregasms can breathe a sigh of relief with a 1-1 record. Lastly, in the Western Territory, Uncle Justy hosted the Siamese Dreamcats at Skyward Peaks. And while the Dreamcats had a 56.1% chance to win, it was Uncle Justy coming out on top, 112.16 and 90.76. The Broncos defense and kicker Brandon McManus connection was huge for Uncle Justy, with a 26-6 advantage over Tyler Bass and the Ravens defense on the Cat side. Gronkowski also caught another couple of touchdowns, looking like a maniac already. Both teams are now 1-1. And of course, this brings us to the Game of the Week, where we all watched an embarrassing defeat by our defending champion and a memorable performance by the home team at Misty Forest in the Western Territory. Our match between 2020 champion Gal and 5th place finisher, the Stellar Bitches, was supposed to be a lot closer based on computers' projections, as the Bitches came in with just a 50.1% chance to win. But that was based on whether Gal checked his lineup, of course, as the defending champ made an insanely bad gaffe of keeping a player on IR. As a starter, taking a 0, and that of course led to the major 134.52 to 64.28 thrashing, as the Stellar Bitches made a bit of a statement in the league, taking down a defending champ. It is worth noting, though, that the Stellar Bitches would have won anyway, even if Gal played his lineup, because of how strong the Stellar Bitches lineup actually was. And of course, Buffalo's defense really changed the trajectory of any kind of projection. 6 sacks, 3 forced turnovers, no points allowed. It very rare you get shutouts in the NFL. Just a laugher against Miami. Also helped Daniel. It also helped that Daniel Carlson hit a couple of field goals, 3 40 to 49-yard field goals, a couple extra points. That meant a 44-15 advantage against Galgal's duo of kicker Harrison Butker and the Rams defense. That's a big time advantage. That's going to win you a lot of weeks. Russell Wilson also outperformed Dak Prescott in a big way with his 343 yards, a couple touchdowns. And one of my keys in the match, Mike Evans, 75 yards and 2 scores, throwing touchdowns by Ezekiel Elliott and Kelvin Ridley. And it just shows how balanced, this line was with just 3 scores under 10 points. Najee Harris, another key player, did score for Galgal, and Chris Carson added a couple of scores, but 6 players under 8 points, too much for a team to overcome, especially against a team that put up numbers like the Stellar Bitches here. And of course, both teams are now 1-1. And I'm joined by the Stellar Bitches here to discuss this big time bounce back win after a tough week 1 where it didn't do that bad, but it was just one of those losses. What's going
between
on?
That and that Packers game, sitting in a hotel room in Atlanta, was pretty. Yeah, I felt pretty defeated. I was like, okay, this is how it's gonna go. This is how it's gonna go.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a weird week 1. It's with that Packers game too, but after you had, I know in fantasy it could be tough. Like you have a good week 1 or a bad week 1, you go into week 2 with either diminished, expectations or too high of an expectation. So, I mean, did you expect to kind of dominate this game of the week like this?
No, I was kind of like, okay, week 2, let's see if we just improve a little bit. Because I wasn't too confident about, my whole lineup after the draft, to be honest. I was a little rusty because honestly, I didn't watch as many games or was not as attentive last season. Yeah. And so when I showed up this season and started studying and looking forward to games, I just felt rusty. And so then after the draft, I was like, should I change some things up? And I just kept it. I'm actually a person who kind of like, once you get your basket of players, I kind of don't want to change it up. So you don't see me do many trades, ever. And that's because I kind of don't trade it up. So I was just kind of like, just hoping to do a little bit better in this week too. And yeah, I was thoroughly surprised with how things were going on Sunday. So, and yeah, I think, the Bills defense really got me because last week they were up pretty high until about halftime. They were holding they just played Miami, but then they allowed a bunch of points to happen and I kind of lost that lead. And so that lost that. So halfway through Sunday and through that game, I was kind of like, I'm getting my hopes up. I'm kind of like watching games and doing work at the same time. Yeah. And now I wish I would have paid attention a bit more, but I don't know, maybe that made him come through.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with defenses too, because you start out with the max number of points that you could get with points allowed and yards allowed. And then you could get turnover bonuses. Yeah, it always drops. Yeah. It always drops. Mm-hmm. So it's you never are excited about your defensive score until the end, because you could have 30 and then all of a sudden it drops like 8.
Yeah,
that's happened to me a couple times.
Yeah, but stuff happened. So I don't know if it's just this week or if it was Miami. I like to think I think positively going forward, but it was Miami. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Miami has some good players, so
yes, individually,
So I wouldn't. I think Buffalo
still fence in Florida, so I won't say too much, but yeah, that did happen.
Yeah. So I mean, one thing I noticed, you talked about kind of rolling with your team, not making many trends. I also noticed that you didn't make a lineup change. You just rolled with your team again just to see what they can do. Did you have, you talked about you weren't feeling all that great going in. You're just hoping for a little bit an improvement. Did you have any panic at all? Like, if things didn't do well, you had to do something?
No, not this week. And I don't know if that's because I was traveling or not, but I think because it's early in the season, I was just going to roll with it. So I wasn't too concerned. I kind of looked at my lineup. There weren't any major red flags. First thing I looked for, of course, are there any injuries? Did any of those little reports come up? Again, I was feeling a little defeated after week 1. So I was like, okay, if I feel like I have, what the models of the NFL suggest are good. I'm just gonna leave it like that. So,
Okay.
and that's so yeah, it's gonna backfire in like week 3 watch if I have the same mentality. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's a grind, I'll tell you that. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously I'm guessing it helps too when you look on the other side and you see your opponent taking zeros. Like, maybe gives you a little bit more confidence. Huh? Did you expect to maybe have a better shot when you saw that 0 out there?
There's a little bit, yeah. I'm naturally not too competitive. I'm very hard on myself, so I mostly like fixate on
Yeah,
what my numbers are doing
yeah,
versus, I mean, of course I'm seeing like, okay, so win or lose, but that's kind of black and white instead of the
yeah.
individual players. So it's more like, okay, why does my team suck? What do they need to do? I'm like, okay, I'm watching the numbers and I'm just like, okay, I just need my kicker to like score 3 touchdowns. Is that a possibility? No. It's like, that's what I always taught myself, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, not really, I would say. But I guess the only time that anxiety comes in, and I hope that the like going down to 0 or that comes in, is probably towards like that last 60 minutes, like that last game, if I really have points, but I didn't know.
Yeah, I gotcha. Well, and that's not a bad strategy too, because you're just focused on your team. So are you more excited, like even if you lose, if your team does well, do you still feel good at that point?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean, points matter too, so
It's like
that
a
is
personality quiz.
well, going with the competitiveness though, your division has 4 1-1 teams now, so it's almost like you're just back to square one going into this last week.
Yeah.
So you do have a possibility of being in first after the first set of division games. So I mean, does that get you a little excited moving forward, knowing
Well,
that?
yeah, if it happens, yeah, then I'll start looking up. Yeah. So, but we'll see what happens right now. Yeah, like you said, it's kind of resetting right now. Anything could happen, and it's still really early, right, in the season. So,
Yeah.
But if it's not it, I'm not gonna be sad. I'm not gonna be sad, right? So
Yeah, still a long way to go too, right?
I'll be proud, yeah, of my team, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have that extra game too, so this year, because the extra schedule, which I guess it works out in the sense of we'll all play each other at least once, so the tiebreakers will be better. There won't be one team didn't play another, so that'll be nice. Lastly, just to finish up here, what are your thoughts on your home field, the Misty Forest? Of course, so that's where you play in our fantasy with a twist world. I mean, are you excited to build up your case to possibly be the chosen one to save the world and find that ancient relic? You have 6 more matches there, and it was kind of a good luck charm as you obviously dominated the defending champ there. So
I need to like get more confident and comfortable with the Misty Forest. I feel like I have not given it as much attention as I should to learn about it, to feel comfortable there. But yeah, like because it is my own base. Of course I want to dominate in it. So yeah. See, again, that's if it's my side, I'm gonna be hard on myself. I want to be competitive. So yeah, definitely I need to put some time into that. So but yeah, that would be nice. Yeah. Yes. That would be.
For sure. All right. So thanks for your time. Obviously appreciate you coming on, giving the people a look at into your fantasy insights and how you excited about your win there. Obviously congrats on that first win. No one wants to start 0-2. I think it's that first win is the one where you don't want it. I've started seasons 0-4, and it's just that first win you want to get early, get it out of the way, and then and go through that. And of course, I look forward to our week 7 matchup as well. I have to actually visit the Misty Forest, so it could be tough for me. So I might feel a little worried. All right, so that was the Stellar Bitches, and next I will give you my thoughts on this taunting rule enforcement and how it's already being called way too much. Take for the 2021 deals with the ridiculous taunting penalty and why it is absolutely being handled the wrong way in the first 2 weeks of the season by the NFL. I know I am not alone with this, with how much Twitter has been blowing up lately. We already knew that the NFL wanted to make it an emphasis and taught the referees to flag anything that is seen as being unsportsmanlike. Taunting, of course, is considered anything where the player celebrates excessively and directs that celebration at the player. That can cause ill will between the teams, of course. If a player scores a touchdown, looks at a defensive player while celebrating, it's being called as a penalty. If a defensive player talks in the direction of a player after a tackle or a sack or a turnover, especially when standing over them, it's considered a penalty. These calls have always existed, of course, but it was looked at as needing to be extremely egregious, and they're obviously subjective calls at the discretion of the referee. So when the NFL gives a directive like this, they're going to pay attention more and be ready to just toss that flag right away. One, it makes the ref look good in the league's eye. Two, if asked to call it more, it is human nature to see it more. But while I do agree that certain actions of players should be flagged as they are pretty much bush league in nature and completely unnecessary. If a player actually says something derogatory or messes with an injured player or stands over them, looks down and yells after a sack or a tackle after that kind of a thing, those seem egregious enough to justify the flag being thrown, of course. But the problem comes when someone flexes a muscle or claps or screams after a big play and might be looking at the player or bench but isn't overtly in their face or isn't overdoing it. That is when the line gets blurred in a big way, especially in close games. A big play can be huge when it comes to momentum swings, and it could mean a win or a loss, those momentum swings. So emotions will come and celebrations will definitely happen. Saying a player can't celebrate that their team is beating the other team for a quick second is a little much. I mean, don't you think? What happens when someone makes a big play, flexes a muscle for a second, gets flagged, and it costs the team the game? When in that same game, the refs almost assuredly missed or erroneously made several holding and pass interference calls. I mean, it happens every time. It's going to cause an uproar. It's putting games in the refs' hands even more, and it is also taking out the fun part of being competitive. There's clearly a difference between trash talking and having fun with it than trash talking and being hateful or disrespectful with it. If the NFL wants robots out there, then maybe they should just make the whole sport fake. Seriously, taunting seems like an odd choice of emphasis when the league continues to have so many bad calls. I mean, how many times do the cameras catch a missed hold or a bad roughing the kicker or passer call that seems very obvious in the replay, or a bad targeting penalty where they called helmet to helmet, but obviously it wasn't, or a missed pass interference. I mean, Saints in the NFC Championship, please, anyone? And then there's the increase in penalties, which will not only slow down the game, but will inevitably change outcomes. There were 2,989 penalties called in 2020. That was down from 3,572 in 2019 and 3,569 in 2018. Already in 2021, we have 421 penalties in just 2 weeks. In an 18-week season, that means we're on pace for 3,789 penalties at this point. Of those penalties to watch, of course, taunting is the big one because that's the emphasis. There were just 9 taunting penalties called during the entire 2020 regular season. Just 9. We already have 10 in 2021 in just 2 weeks. Remember when touchdown celebrations were banned in 2006? That season saw a 50% increase in unsportsmanlike penalties and a 40% increase in taunting penalties from 2005 to 2006. That could end up being even higher when we look at the increases from 20 to 21, unless the league cools off on this taunting emphasis. I understand the need to not have egregious taunting, but to penalize teams for simple celebrations that are just competitive in nature during a game where the other team is trying to be better than the other one seems a little bit off. And just wait until the big time rivalries happen. New Orleans versus Atlanta, Chicago versus Green Bay, Baltimore versus Pittsburgh, Dallas versus Philadelphia. We're getting that right away. And then wait until the last 5 weeks of the season with teams fighting for playoff spots and division titles. I mean, for fantasy football purposes, get ready for big-time changes to the final results as well. Extra first downs, plays giving players more chances to score, defenses obviously being on the field way too much and losing and giving up points, giving up yards. I mean, It's not going to be good for fantasy. It's not going to be good for the NFL. It's not going to be good for competitiveness. I mean, when you look at the competitive panel that they have with owners and general managers and coaches, they thought that this was going to make it more competitive. Seems a little petty. It seems like somebody had some taunting penalties happen to their team and they were a little upset and they wanted to get back at them, is what it sounds like. And of course, again, fantasy football, nobody wants to see these extra ridiculous plays at the end of games. I mean, it's just taking away, it's making the game longer. It's taking away momentum. It's not fun to watch as a fan. And I'm sure it's not fun to go through as a player. I mean, you want to have fun. You're playing a game. I mean, seriously, in conclusion of all this that I'm ranting, I think that this enforcement of taunting penalties is a bit idiotic. And now let's look ahead to week 3 and hope the NFL has heard our pleas and will ask the refs to possibly take it down a notch. Starting in the Western Territory, the Stellar Bitches travel to the Skyward Peaks to take on Uncle Justy in a battle of 1-1 teams. Uncle Justy has a 51.6% chance to win. Some intriguing matchups to watch include Ezekiel Elliott versus Saquon Barkley, Calvin Ridley versus Julio Jones, and the Buffalo defense versus the Denver defense. Also, will Rob Gronkowski continue to get touchdowns? The man has been pretty nuts lately. Next, the Siamese Dreamcats travel to the Golden Sands to take on defending champion Galgal in another battle of 1-1 teams. The Cats have a 71.8% chance to win due to Galgal's lack of coaching, still leaving a guy on IR in his starting lineup. No one knows what the strategy is, but these odd stretches of not coaching happened last year too, and Galgal still won a title, so we'll see what happens long term. Lamar Jackson versus Dak Prescott, the Ravens defense versus the Rams defense, and Delvin Cook versus Chris Carson are matchups to watch. In the Central Territory, Natty Ice Ice Baby looks for her first win in her home opener at Steel Shores, hosting 1-1 Meowmaster. Meowmaster has a 57.9% chance to win coming in. Jalen Hurts versus Aaron Rodgers, Derrick Henry versus Devontae Adams, and the San Francisco defense versus the Washington defense look like matchups to watch. Also, will Derrick Henry feast again? The man's been a beast lately, and it's going to be hard to beat Meowmaster if he's putting up 40 points. And will Marquise Brown continue to show he is a candidate for draft pick of the year in our league, as Natty Ice picked him in the late rounds, and he's looked pretty good, like a wide receiver 1. Next, the Great Superior Superb Owls host Low-Key Lebowski Thor at the Great Superior Eye. Of course, Lebowski Thor is 2-0 and looking to remain in first place, coming in with a 58.4% chance to win against the 1-1 Superb Owls. Kyler Murray versus Patrick Mahomes, Christian McCaffrey versus Nick Chubb, Deebo Samuel versus George Kittle, and the Cleveland Browns defense versus the Tampa Bay defense both intrigue me. Also, will Kyler Murray be neutralized a bit with the Owls' strategy of using Christian Kirk, Chase Edmonds, and kicker Matt Prater? Will it even matter? We'll see. And in the Eastern Territory, 2-0 Risky Business hosts the 1-1 multiple scoregasms at the Old Kingdom. Risky Business hopes to remain undefeated with a 58.7% chance to win. Aaron Jones versus Alvin Kamara, the Cardinals defense versus the Patriots defense, Antonio Gibson versus Tyson Williams are all matchups that could be huge in deciding a winner. Plus, can Chris Godwin catch the majority of Tom Brady's touchdowns? That will be key as well. And that brings us to the Game of the Week. The next Game of the Week brings a matchup between 2020 runner-up Remember the Titans and 2018 runner-up Green Acres in a battle of teams looking to get another shot at their first title later this year. Remember, the Titans will host this game, so let's take a closer look at his home base, Liberty's Watch.
Hello. It is once again time to look at two contenders to be worthy enough to be the chosen one. Before we jump into this great battle, we should take a moment to learn about the next place in our journey, Liberty's Watch. Liberty's Watch is named by the strange statue that seems to be looking out towards the vast ocean with the remnants of an ancient city behind. Many believe the statue is actually a gift from a tribe called the Chicago Cubs, but after consulting the ancient files here, I noticed that the statue was supposed to invite the hungry, poor, and wretched to be safe and free. Of course, in your future, the shadows brought with it cold and ice and snow to this region, burying most remnants of the civilization that once lay before it. That safety and freedom was long gone, and no living remnant seemed to remain besides the guard-like Yeti creature that roams the surface. But in my findings, it seems I've stumbled upon a question. Why would the shadows bury this place and then leave a guarding monster? It makes me wonder if there is a hidden power here that could aid us in our journey. Or it could be a way to hunt anyone who is unlucky enough to wind up here. So please, do not go wandering around this area just yet. Now back to the match.
Remember, the Titans are searching for the first win of the season and come in with a 57.5% chance to win against 1-1 Green Acres. There are plenty of players that intrigue me here. Will Justin Herbert get to throw up a bunch of passes to play catch-up with Kansas City offense? Will Daniel Jones take advantage of his matchup and keep up? It might be a high-scoring quarterback battle there. Can Damian Harris and Sony Michel do enough against Joe Mixon and Austin Eckler? That's interesting. But on the other side, can Robert Tonyan and Darrell Henderson do enough against Travis Kelce and Cooper Kupp? They could actually cancel each other out there. And then there's the whole Adam Thielen versus Justin Jefferson matchup. Who's going to catch the touchdown? Who's going to catch the multiple touchdowns? We'll see what happens there. But there are two players I am pulling out as potential game changers here. For Remember the Titans, I'm going with CeeDee Lamb. The Cowboys struggled to get the passing game going against the Chargers in Week 2. Dak Prescott didn't do much through the air, but one player he seemed to target a lot was CeeDee Lamb. In fact, Lamb had 24 targets in the 2 games so far, catching 15 of them for 185 yards and a TD. But then there is the matchup as well. Philadelphia's defense has been tough on Carolina and San Francisco so far, giving up the 3rd least passing yardage. But both of those teams did well rushing the ball. So does that bode well for Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard to do most of the damage, or will Lamb continue to get enough targets? And can he do anything with those targets in terms of touchdowns? And of course, he does have some drops. He had 3 drops in Week 1, so that's also something to watch. He has to actually catch the ball with those targets. For Green Acres, I'm looking at Allen Robinson II. Allen Robinson is supposed to be the top option for the Chicago Bears passing game, especially on 3rd down passes, but that hasn't happened so far under Andy Dalton as the quarterback. Robinson caught a touchdown last week, but he also he's just averaging 29.5 yards per game. One thing to note is that he only had 4 targets last week in a game where the defense was pretty supreme. He had 11 targets in Week 1 when the Bears had to chase the Rams. But as far as we know, Dalton is out in Week 3, and Justin Fields will get his first career NFL start. That can either change the trajectory of Robinson or further impact it in a negative way. However, Cleveland has allowed the 10th most passing yards in 2 games so far, which includes a game against Houston with an injury replacement at quarterback. So can Fields get Robinson the ball, and can Robinson take advantage of a seemingly good matchup? Well, all of it will be decided on the field. That is the show for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we get a major update to our epic story and get ready for us all to venture into the long stretch of out-of-division games where wildcard tiebreakers begin to come into play. Before we go, here are the updated power rankings headed into Week 3.
Please follow the SunDried Tomatoes YouTube channel and watch content including original shows like Legends of the Diamond, random reactions, and Brewing the Facts, the SunDried Tomatoes podcast in video form, and other sports brewing or entertainment related videos. You can like the Facebook page and follow me on Instagram at eclectic_yotso for news updates and just to get to know me better.